Welcome to Living Not So Fabulously.
So, David, did you know that Mary on the Mary Tyler Moore Show didn't have a job when she got to Minneapolis?
No, she didn't?
No, the first episode was her interview with Lou Grant.
Okay, and how is that relevant?
Because Mary made it look so easy, and today's guest is here to share that TV isn't exactly like real life. Barton Jackson is the powerhouse executive director of the New York LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce, where he's turning queer ambition into economic impact.
After maxing out credit cards chasing opportunity in Seattle, Barton learned that building community equity is just as crucial as financial equity. Now he's helping LGBTQ businesses across the Big Apple cash in on their own worth. And you've got the receipts.
I find the first part of Barton's interview so interesting because it parallels my story of when I moved to Denver. Shortly after college, I also moved to a new city with $5,000 in my pocket, just like Barton. And it wasn't nearly enough, even in 1999. Yes, the late 1900s.
Right. And you did amass a bunch of credit card debt trying to fit in with the in crowd.
Yeah, but I think Barton had his act together a little bit more quickly than I did.
I think so too. Let's hear what he has to say.
Welcome to the show, Barton.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So, welcome to the show. We appreciate you coming on. A lot of queer kids growing up in small towns across America dream of the day when they can finally flee off to a better city with safety and acceptance. You did that, but you weren't quite prepared for that. Would you mind elaborating on that story a little bit?
Sure. So, quick synopsis. Born in California, raised in Idaho, moved to Seattle, Washington after college, and then came to New York. So, in the process of growing up in Idaho, as you might imagine, not a lot of LGBTQ plus connectivity or support from city and state at the time. It was really a matter of do your work, kind of keep to yourself. There wasn't really the ability to have mentors or a lot of feedback from people who were going through the same life experiences, unless you were, enjoying the nightlife. When I moved to Seattle, Washington, that was during the subprime mortgage crisis. So everything was shutting down in terms of job opportunities. And, my sister had sold me on it, telling me that there were opportunities to do career advancement, find my way further up the corporate ladder. I was already working in banking at the time and moved to Seattle, Washington without a job, thinking that I had enough savings to kind of get by and a friend to let me couch surf. And then very quickly found out that Seattle's expensive and racked up a decent amount of credit card debt. I think it was about 10,000 at the time. While I found stable work, I was a contract employer after finally finding an opportunity after 3 months of living there. But then, had to find an apartment, had to furnish the apartment, had to keep myself well fed, all that good stuff. Quickly realizing that, relocating without a job was not in my best interest. But that kind of accelerated my desire to save up and eliminate that credit card debt, because you could see it eating away at your paycheck when you wanted to have other life events like travel or visiting family. Most of my family at the time was still living in Idaho. I wasn't certainly doing any major travels myself, and kind of saw that I needed to save up and bring that debt down if I was going to live a better quality of life.
You mind sharing with us how you felt emotionally during that time period of this kind of financial insecurity? Were you scared? Were you ashamed? Were you even more determined?
I was probably more determined. For me, money, credit, all that are tools, right? It's if you're using it responsibly, it's an investment. Was I using it responsibly? Yeah, probably not. But the thing that was different for me is I saw a different investment when I moved to Seattle, Washington, because, where I went from a place where, you could be fired by the wrong boss if they didn't like that you were gay, an HIV/AIDS prevention education treatment center that was like the size of a shoebox in a strip mall that was regularly protested, and really no support for the community outside of the bars and a nonprofit that was run by our drag queen population. There was nothing in terms of support. And so here I come to this city when I finally landed a job. It was for a credit union. It wasn't a glamorous job. I was essentially a teller, but I loved it. because, I met the CFO who was a gay man, married, had two adopted children. I didn't even know that was like a viable future. And I
Hmm.
guess I should ceremonially married at the time. And then, he invited me to the Greater Seattle Business Association, which is the LGBTQ plus Chamber of Commerce in Seattle. And, here I am getting on a boat, cruising the Sound, and on it are the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence to executives of Fortune, 500 companies, foreign dignitaries, small business owners that might make ice cream on Capitol Hill, right? And it was just so cool to see a community that was had empowered itself over years, but B was well organized and wanted to invest in community for its own betterment.
Hold that thought, Barton. We'll be right back after this quick break.
So, welcome back. If you're just joining us on Living Not So Fabulously, we're talking to LGBTQ advocate Barton Jackson, who overcame his own financial struggles and is revealing what we can do to build a more inclusive and financially stable future.
So, Barton, you were just telling us before the break about how you were being exposed to this whole different kind of lifestyle, all these opportunities that you didn't know you necessarily had coming from a small town. How did you get focused on creating the life that you wanted and not get sucked into trying to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, and then not be able to have other opportunities down the road?
Sure. So I think it's really important when you're looking at your life, recognizing it's yours, right? It's nobody else's.
Right.
And, kind of thinking about your values and what's important to you. So for me, uh, when I came out, I was already, I think within the first year, my first friend decided to unfortunately take their life. And, throughout a decade, I would lose one to two friends a year, whether it was from, you know, suicide, drug addiction, you know, violence bias, HIV, AIDS complications, you name it. And what I ultimately saw was that it was lack of resources, lack of investment, and lack of support. And so that was also part of that night and day coming from Idaho to Seattle. So I started to think, what can I do? Kind of off the side of the desk or as my whole self, both in profession and in my personal life. And you know, I decided to start marrying those things together and finding where I could balance them. So for me, was still in the financial industry. I stayed in banking from the time I left Idaho through the time I was in Seattle, and then when I came to New York. And for me, finding out how to kind of get where I wanted to go was finding the employer that found value in letting me bring my whole self to work,
Mm.
but also bringing that into community. And so when I came to New
Mm.
York, I was employed, right off the bat, I think a month later. And my first role, I was a personal banker. I was in that role for about a year and a half. Then I was a store supervisor for a brand new location in Columbus Circle. I was that for about a year and a half. And then I was the assistant store manager for a new location up in Inwood for just about a year and a half. And then I was a small business banker for about 3 years. And then I was a commercial banker or commercial lender for the remainder of the time before becoming the executive director here. And the secret to all that was I represented my community, but I also represented it myself as a banker, always at the same time, always wanting to help people, whether it was during professional hours or after hours, leveraging my education, my experiences, my background, wherever it was applicable.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's great to see how you transitioned from your early life in Idaho through to what you are doing today, you are very connected to the LGBT community and to the business community in the Big Apple. And so we know that you have kind of your thumb on the pulse of what is going on with small businesses, especially right now between Trump's attacks on DEI and the manufactured trade war that we have going on right now. How is this impacting the small businesses that you're working with? How are they struggling? Is it especially a hard time for them? Can you provide us with maybe some numbers or some idea of what you're seeing happen right now under Trump 2.0?
That's an excellent question, and it's probably one that's answered similar to anywhere you go, which is that uncertainty is a challenge for business at any level, but it certainly is for businesses that come to a chamber of commerce, right? Like our responsibility is to build an ecosystem.
Mhm.
We are here to provide visibility, advancement, connectivity, and we're also there to provide education and insight, right? So our whole purpose as a chamber is to be some sort of economic engine. And so, there are things about, DEI, and I'll talk about it from a chamber's perspective, which is more about strategic sourcing, right? Many of our businesses look to do business with other businesses or corporations or government. So, you know, whether you have a certification as part of your strategic sourcing, and some examples are, if you are a veteran of military service, you own at least 51% of your company and operate your company. There are certifications to recognize you formally as a veteran-owned and operated company. Same thing is true for minority women and then LGBT. And the difference is that most of the programs are recognized by some level of government. Wherever you go in the U.S., there's some level of density for interest in making sure those businesses are visible. LGBT is one of the ones that has a challenge with government recognition. So,
Yeah. Right.
when we talk about the DEI landscape from a strategic sourcing lens, part of me, I'm trying not to get bitter yet. I know I turned 40, but and we're on the cusp, but part of me just kind of wants to shrug and say, "What's changed?" Right? Um, the other part of me says that visibility matters. Our population was heavily decimated. AIDS e- uh, endemic during the 80s, all the way through till mid 2000. I think '09 was when we started to see AIDS mortalities decline. Right, so we went from the '80s all the way till when Taylor Swift started making music. Right, and so you have intergenerational losses of entrepreneurial drive, capital, estates, knowledge, right? Especially in metropolitan areas like New York. So I would argue, anecdotally and a little bit statistically, that our economy is probably, as LGBTQ plus economy, has a lot of opportunity for investment. Of the sample size that I can go to of the chamber, we're probably most businesses on average are grossing an annual revenue of about 1.1 million um,
Hmm.
in the
Nice.
metro New York City area. And, high concentration of professional services. So what you're seeing is an opportunity for other industries, but also to map out where those are. So the uncertainty part of it is, if this is a national headwind, what's going to happen city or statewide? Will there be discussions of adding in LGBTQ plus recognition for businesses? And, part of that comes with the opportunity for doing business with government. But the other bigger opportunity is the generational development of new entrepreneurial pools for New York City and New York State, right? So that could potentially mean, we're about 19.5 million New Yorkers, I believe. I won't use the new Gallup poll for the 9.3%. I'm going to stick to, Williams Institute's statistics on our ratio against the general population. But, if you apply that and then you apply the entrepreneurial ratio and you just pretended like everything was equal in New York City and New York State, you're probably talking about 58,000 businesses, give or take, that are either partially or majority owned by LGBTQ plus New Yorkers. And then if you go statewide, you're probably talking somewhere close to 109,000 businesses. So, if that were equivalent to the small business contributions towards GDP from the general population, then you're talking about probably like 58 billion being supported by LGBTQ plus businesses. So visibility versus uncertainty, kind of a constant theme for us, regardless of where we are in our history. And then the other part you mentioned was tariffs. Tariffs is also currently a level of uncertainty, right? We're going back and forth. We're seeing this used as a negotiation tactic. But what's that going to mean largely to our small businesses, right? Many of which, kind of require, from an access to capital standpoint or an operational expense standpoint, the use of overseas vendors, right? So you've got to, have to now look very diligently at their supply chain, especially if they are themselves are a supplier to like a big box retailer, or someone with a large contract, to an industry that's going to be very sensitive to any sort of increase in the cost of goods sold to them.
Barton, do you mind sharing with us what is one piece of financial advice with your experiences and your experience working with small businesses that you would give to the LGBT community today?
It's all math. Uh, you know, don't overthink it. Uh, you know, Budgets seem scary, but you can forecast pretty easily what you can and can't afford, and you can decide what is and isn't worth it, right? So whether it's your personal household or your business, it's important to kind of do a risk assessment of things that you want to do. I mentioned moving to New York years ago, I think 12, 13 years now. And I learned my lesson from when I moved from Idaho to Seattle, Washington. I looked at the cost of goods comparables between Seattle and New York. My eyes shot out of my head when I saw the rent. But then I figured out what kind of job, when I moved here, would be sustainable. I didn't look for the fanciest neighborhood to live in, the best apartment. I looked for what was going to be adequate to meet my needs and what would allow me to save up and kind of scale up my lifestyle. And when I say my lifestyle, I don't do a lot. I mean, if I'm not working, I'm probably at home painting or drawing. But for me, it was like, how do I acquire a home? How do I make sure that I can control my cost of living, which is my biggest expense? What's it going to take for me to save? So, what are my expenses now? What kind of income do I need? What kind of savings plan do I need to have to get where I want to go? And I'll be honest, I did pretty okay, but I certainly had some setbacks. And so I would say I'm probably a couple years behind where I wanted to be on homeowner acquisition. But I'm very happy with the fact that I am in my maybe forever home. My at least it's appreciating, which is always great. And that's my biggest thing is it's don't freak out about making a decision. Just do the math, make it informed, assess your risks. What's it going to cost? What are you going to make? And keep it that simple. And if you feel overwhelmed, reach out to people and ask questions. Like you're not an island unto yourself. If you're a business owner, right, you've got a banker, an attorney, and an accountant. I guarantee it, right? If you're a personal household, whether you have a chosen family or your biological family, they've lived there, right? They've been there, they've done that, they got the T-shirt. But also, you still have a banker. You probably have a tax advisor, or at least you can kind of pick someone's brain that's in that industry, right? There are people to ask. There are communities around you. You cannot forget the value and the impact that your community can have when you're making critical decisions. I did that when I bought this place. So even though I did the math and I knew I could afford it and I would be okay, my real estate agent was, a good friend and that has been doing it for 10 years, so I could trust her knowledge and expertise. Well, I was doing it longer. I knew her for 10 years, excuse me. My real estate attorney came from the chamber. I'd known him for years. And then because I needed to do some renovations, my contractor I'd known for years through another networking group. And so I could ask all these people, figure out my budget, figure out what my risks were of going under, at, or over budget to make sure that I didn't go crazy when I purchased my first home.
Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for all the work that you do at the Chamber in New York. It's critically important. And we appreciate you sharing your personal story. It was great having you.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Man, interviews like that just really inspire me because it really shows that the community is there for each other, especially in hard times like we're all dealing with right now.
Right. I agree with that. I also appreciate how he talked about this idea of strategically blending his social life with his professional life. We call that building your power tribe. That's when you have a group that is both the combination of the people you love to hang out with and have fun with, as well as the people that you are focused on building something with. So what is in the middle of that Venn diagram is your power tribe.
Yeah, and we can attest, it can be all too easy to just focus on hanging out with your fun friends, and that can have sometimes dire consequences to your financial situation.
Right. So our assignment for you this week is to think of those 3 to 5 friends that you have that could also be in your power tribe. They're your colleagues as well, or at least trying to build something.
So thanks for tuning in to another episode. Like what you see, scan the QR code to follow Yahoo Finance podcasts or for more videos and expert insights. When you do, another tariff gets itemized on Amazon.com. Thank you, and until next time,
stay fabulous.
This content was not intended to be financial advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional financial services.